Hello, hey, I haven't done a book review in a while. It's been a minute, but here we are. This might be the first video that you're seeing in the new office, even though I have filmed some other things in the new office already. Check it out, check it out. This is my new filming space. I hope you like it, because this is what we have. If you want a full tour of the office, you can find it on my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. I've been keeping my patrons up to date on all of our house stuff, all of the remodeling, all of the craziness. I completely redid this room myself, everything from the flooring to painting the walls. That's not what we're here to talk about today. Today we're here to talk about some outer space horror. Although the real horror is probably that I couldn't be bothered to put on makeup today, because I have a lot of stuff to do today and putting on makeup is just not in my schedule. However, I do have a great pumpkin shirt. That's Halloween-y, right? So the book we're going to talk about today is Dead Silence, which looked really enticing to me. Let's read the synopsis. Claire Kovalik is days away from being unemployed, made obsolete, when her beacon repair crew picks up a strange distress signal. With nothing to lose and no desire to return to Earth, Claire and her team decide to investigate. What they find on the other end of the signal is a shock. The Aurora, a famous luxury liner that vanished on its maiden tour of the solar system more than 20 years ago. A salvage claim like this could set Claire and her crew up for life, but a quick trip through the Aurora reveals something isn't right. Whispers in the dark, flickers of movement, words scrawled in blood. Claire must fight to hold on to her sanity and find out what really happened on the Aurora before she and her crew meet the same ghastly fate. I am fascinated by the idea of space horror. Some of my favorite movies are that. I love Alien. I know it's cliche, but it's so good. I love The Thing, which isn't outer space, but the creature is an alien. So I love the combination of outer space and horror. It's a great combo. And so I was like, yes, ghost ship. It's like the Titanic meets The Shining, and I'm in.
Titanic was called the Ship of Dreams.
Here's Johnny!
But was this book as much of a hit as I hoped it would be, or was it a major dud? I feel like my quality of light is changing by the second. It's gonna take a little bit of experimentation to get my camera and everything all set up perfectly for this space. I do have windows facing me, as you can see reflected on my glasses. Some people complain about my glasses reflection, but we're just gonna have to deal with that, okay? If that's your biggest complaint about my videos, I don't know what to do with you. There's so many other delightful things to complain about. Right, Dead Silence. So, right away, all the characters are really flat. Now, this is pretty common. This book is actually less of a horror and more of a thriller, and once I realized that, I was not surprised that the characters are incredibly flat. Now, all of these archetypes would be great for the characters to build off of. There's nothing wrong with starting your characters out as archetypes and then growing them from there. We have the nice one slash the girly one, so there's the sweet girl, too good for this world, too pure, the mean one, the nerd, and the hot one. And then of course we have our main character, who is the sad one, the PTSD one. You've seen it before. And none of these characters grow beyond those archetypes. That is all they are. Which for me is a huge disappointment, because characters are the main reason that I read books. The biggest problem that I have with a lot of horror and thriller books that use character archetypes is that we have to care when they die, and I don't care. And if I don't care, I'm not scared. I'm not stressed. And I should be feeling scared and stressed in your horror book, in your thriller book. You might want to use archetypes so that you can get to the plot faster. But it does, at least for me, kind of ruin the plot if the characters aren't there for me to care about. Then we have our main character. She has a tragic backstory, TM, and guilt, TM. Now, many of you know that extreme guilt is one of my personal least favorite things for a main character. It allows them a lot of time to wallow and feel sorry for themselves, and I'm just not into that. Now, some people either won't mind, or maybe even that's a feature, not a bug, but I personally don't like it. She is the crabby loner type, and at first I was like, yeah, okay, I can get into this. It's sort of like she's a loner, but she loves her crew, or at least she claims that she does, or at least she feels like she has some responsibility towards them. I'm not really sure exactly where her emotions lie there. She's such a crabby loner that every time she's like, I have to save my crew, I'm like, Why though? Except for one, the hot one. You hate them all. Well, the hot one and the sweet one. Also, the main character being so ridiculously standoffish does impact the other characters as well, because, as we mentioned, they stay archetypes, and part of that reason is because the main character doesn't really get to know them, she doesn't want to, which doesn't give us as readers a chance to get to know them if the author had decided to give them more personality than what we see on the first chapter. Honestly, reading this book, I was thinking, this is a great premise, love this, but I would love to see it from a different writer. This writer, in my opinion, was not the right person to write this book. This book would have thrived on a building sense of dread and ominousness, and that's what this author was trying to get across. But instead, it just kind of felt like a list of things. It felt like I was reading an instructional manual, but also there were dead bodies in it. The style was so removed that I couldn't invest in what was happening, and as a result, everything just fell flat for me. As much as I'm not a Stephen King stan, I would love to see him do a story like this because I know he could nail the feeling of building dread. He could have me chewing my fingernails off in anticipation of what sort of horrors lay in store for this crew. The other thing that's happening is this book has a framing device. With the main character in the present being interrogated, she's in a mental institution. She came back to Earth all by herself and she doesn't exactly remember what happened to her because, you know, plot amnesia happened, you know how that goes, and she's being interrogated. What happened to your crew? What did you see? And that's fine. We get jumps back to the past with her and her crew as she's being interrogated. However, both of these are told in the present tense, and I feel that that was a huge mistake. In my opinion, everything in the past should have been told in the past tense, and everything in the present should have been told in the present tense, because everything in the past being told in the present tense made it more difficult for me to realize like where I was to orient myself as a reader or listener in my case. I don't know why the author decided to have everything be in the present tense. My suspicion is that the author knew that present tense can make things feel more urgent, more immersive for the reader, and so she made everything in present tense so that the reader would maybe feel a little bit more stressed out in the past scenes with the ghost ship, but it didn't work, and it just made me confused. Now, the twist of this book is so predictable because you are being spoon-fed the hints the entire time. This book is very heavy-handed. If you're paying attention, you will not be surprised by the twist. In fact, I was so unsurprised, I didn't realize that it was supposed to be a twist until I was talking about it later with some other people in our book club. Like, maybe not the small details, but like the overall, I was like, yeah, of course. Carry on. One thing I didn't like about this book is the main character has the thank goodness I have the right mental illness trope. Not a fan. I love it if you give your character a mental illness, and at first I was kind of intrigued by the fact that she has severe PTSD and she has been in mental health institutions before. She witnessed something horrible in her childhood that left her very traumatized and scarred. However, because this is a book, it also gives her the ability to see ghosts. And it definitely falls into that whole, thank goodness I'm mentally ill, because we needed exactly my flavor of mental illness to deal with this strange situation, and it's just not great, that trope. I know you might be thinking, but why isn't it good, Julie, and why isn't it good to portray mental illness as useful? And that's just it. It's not useful. Trust me, as a person with severe anxiety, it is not useful. My anxiety hampers me almost on the daily. I'm never like, oh, thank goodness anxiety came along. Well, occasionally I am because I'm very, very stressed out about forgetting something, so I often like triple check it, and sometimes that has come in handy. But most of the time it is an absolute nuisance and ruins my life. So this whole Hollywood kind of narrative that actually mental illness or autism are like superpowers actually just is not true, not realistic, and I would like to see more realistic portrayals of mental illness as something that you just have to deal with and learn to cope with in your life instead of like a superpower. There's also the thing about the main character always being right. She is always right. People who disagree with her are always bad and wrong. The climax of the book went on way too long. The first half of the book was still pretty interesting because we didn't know exactly what was going on. We were watching the characters explore the ship, and even though I wasn't scared for even a second, I was still intrigued. But then the climax happened and it just kept going, and I was so over the book by that point. I was just like, can someone please just like kill some, like get this over with. Although it was very reminiscent of the end of the Shining movie. I mean, that's probably intentional, but at the same time I was so over it. I was like, no, can we stop? Can we please just stop? Okay, so a couple of spoilers near the ending of the book, so if you don't want those, go ahead and skip to this time code. Okay, so spoilers happening now. When the main character finally returns to the ship, she thinks her entire crew is dead, but she finds someone alive. And who would it be? Her romantic interest, with whom she has zero chemistry because he's just a cardboard cutout person. But I think who it should have been was her rival, the grumpy one, the one she didn't get along with. I think that would have made for a way more interesting dynamic if she got back to the ship and found it was him who was still alive. I really wanted her to have to deal with befriending someone that she didn't like, instead of everyone that she didn't like just being bad people. And of course, here's the big spoiler. We find out that the ship is like rigged. It is putting out some kind of sound that makes people hallucinate, evil corporations, blah, blah, blah. And it's been done. It's been done so many times, this kind of thing. It immediately reminded me, a giant Mass Effect fan, obviously, of how the Reapers indoctrinate. So it just made me curious if this author is a Mass Effect fan.
Has been staring at the samples for hours. He says he's listening to them. God damn! What? The thing, that just gray thing, it disappeared when I looked straight at it. It came out of the damn wall, where we took off that panel. I didn't see anything. You should lie down.
But also it is a little bit too bad that it turned out to be such a cliched thing. Like, even though the ghosts kind of also turned out to be real as well as hallucinations, which was, by the way, never adequately explained, the main character can just see real, actual ghosts for some reason, as well as the hallucinations, and it's just like, sure, that's a power that she has. Why not? She's mentally ill. Not that you can't use something in your book that has been done a million times, but with everything else kind of falling flat in this book, disappointing that that also was not very interesting. Alright, spoilers over. So, my basic conclusion here is that the premise of this book was so interesting. The execution fell flat on its face for me. If you are someone who does not read a lot of horror, does not read a lot of thrillers, this might be a good gateway drug if you're trying to get into it. But for somebody who has read a lot of those things, this was just really boring and really disappointing, quite frankly. So much more could have been done with it, and I would love to have seen it in the hands of an author who was a lot more descriptive, a lot more visceral with their writing, and a lot more interested in fleshing out the characters to really get me in there, caring about everybody, and invested when they die. So that's it. Those are my thoughts on Dead Silence. Have you read it? Did you like it? Was I dead wrong about any of my assessments? Comment down below and let me know. Thanks everyone for watching. I'm going to take this moment to give a special shout out to one of my own horror stories that you can read for free. It is still up on Wattpad and is my most popular read, that being Second Floor. It is also a horror thriller. Now this one is in its first draft form, so it's a little crunchy, but people are still really enjoying it. So there must be something that people are finding in it, and I think it's the characters. So if you want something that actually has interesting and deep and queer characters in it, check out Second Floor. And I will see all of you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye!
Shepard Commander.